The Headford Ambush took place on the 21st of March 1921, during the Irish War of Independence. The 2nd Kerry Brigade of the Irish Republican Army ambushed a train carrying British troops at Headford Junction railway station. A total of at least 16 people died in the incident, 10 British soldiers, 2 IRA volunteers and 4 civilians. Background: the guerrilla war in Kerry escalated rapidly in the spring of 1921. The county was occupied by the British Army, Auxiliary Division and Black and Tan paramilitary police, as well as the Royal Irish Constabulary. In the months before the ambush, they had begun rounding up male inhabitants of nearby towns and villages and searching them to find IRA suspects. They first did this in Tralee on the 11th of January. On the 23rd of January, in response to the assassination by the IRA of Rick District Inspector Sullivan, 1,000 soldiers and armed police surrounded Ballymacalligat, arrested 240 men and marched them to Tralee for questioning. British forces, especially the auxiliaries, also carried out a number of reprisal shootings on local civilians. In response, the IRA set up full-time guerrilla units to avoid arrest and to assemble units capable of taking on British patrols. On the 2nd of March, the 2nd Kerry Brigade set up its own flying column under Dan Allman and Tom McEllistrim. On the 5th of March, McEllistrim led 20 volunteers from the column to a successful ambush at Clonbannon, in which they cooperated with Cork IRA units, killing 4 British soldiers. The ambush, buoyed by the success in Cork, the 2nd Kerry Brigade tried on a number of occasions to ambush British forces in Kerry itself. On the 21st of March, an IRA party was billeted around 4 miles from the Headford railway junction when they heard that British troops were returning by train from Kenmare to Tralee. As the train did not go directly, the British would have to change at Headford, making them vulnerable to ambush. Allman, commanding 30 volunteers, reached the junction only 12 minutes before the train, carrying 30 soldiers of the 1st Royal Fusiliers, arrived. The railway staff just had time to flee before the train pulled into the platform, where its passengers had to change trains for Tralee. Alongside the soldiers, the train was packed with cattle and pig farmers on the way back from the market in Kenmare. Most of the civilians had already got off when the British soldiers began to disembark. Allman himself tried to disarm the 1st Fusilier, but shot him when he resisted. This was the signal for the IRA to begin shooting at the unprepared British troops. One of the first of the British casualties was their officer, Lieutenant C.E. Adams DCM, who was shot dead when he appeared at the carriage door, as were several other soldiers who were standing in front of the engine. The surviving British troops opened fire from the train, while those who had got off scrambled underneath it for cover. In the ensuing close-quarter firefight, conducted at a range of just 20 yards, 3 civilians and 2 IRA volunteers were killed. 2/3 of the British forces estimated to have been killed or wounded. McEllistrim called on the survivors to surrender, and when they refused, the IRA began to move in to finish off those who kept shooting. Just as they were doing so, another train pulled into the junction, carrying another party of British troops. The IRA column had used most of its ammunition and was forced to retreat, escaping toward the hills in the south. Casualties: Allman and another IRA guerrilla, Lt. Jimmy Bailey, were killed in the ambush. 1 civilian was killed outright and 2 mortally wounded, with 2 others seriously wounded in the legs. In the immediate aftermath of the ambush, McEllistrim shot dead a suspected spy whom his men had captured. The British official report stated that 1 officer and 7 soldiers were killed and 12 wounded. The British cabinet was told that 2 of the wounded later died of the wounds.